What is going on, everybody? Sam Dog Infamous 253 coming at you with the Hawks Nest as we go over our preview for the Seahawks Week 3 matchup in Minneapolis, taking on the Minnesota Vikings in US Bank Stadium. First of all, Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing well, my man. How about yourself?
No, I'm doing good. Just got back from work and just ready to get into it, and still pissed about last Sunday, and hopefully we can take it out on Minnesota this week. So what do you want to start out with first in this one? I think first we got to start out with the offense needing to make sure that they're maintaining long drives so the defense can get rested up, because that was obviously one of the issues of why we lost last week in the second half when Derrick Henry was able to dust us for all those rushing yards and those touchdowns. One of my big factor for that was our offense not being able to maintain those drives was why our defense was gassed and not able to keep up with Derrick Henry. Granted, we were holding them well in the first quarter. Now we got to do that with Dalvin Cook, which he may not be 100% because of that sprained ankle he sustained last week.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a common sentiment amongst the fan base out there. It's definitely been a game that's divided people 50-50, as long as what I can tell just off of interactions. And that is that there is sort of half that go, okay, well, this game's on the offense. And then half that go, well, this game's actually was really on the defense. And I do think that there's a doling of blame that needs to be parted out to both sides. I don't think that's equal. And I do think that there's one side that deserves more than the other side of the ball. And where I come back to this is actually a pretty intricate way of getting to that. And that is this: you gave up 350 yards passing. It could have easily been 400 yards passing if the Titans didn't have a case of the dropsies throughout their receiving core throughout the day. Yeah. Easily could have been 400 yards passing. And you gave up 190 yards to Derrick Henry. That's the most amount of yards that Coach Carroll's defense has given up in his entire time here, with the exception of the Adrian Peterson game back in 2012. When you look at last year and the way we lost football games, getting the doors blown off our defense and our offense blowing the doors off their defense, you were still able to stop the run during that time period. Yep. While that offense was not running sustaining drives last year, you were still able to do that. And in no time last year were we saying, well, we need to get better in the time possession or anything else. We're saying we need to get the defense fixed here. So I can't give the defense the same pass on a day where you didn't do anything well. You didn't stop the run. You didn't stop the pass. You didn't really particularly rush the passer all that well. You didn't tackle great. So it becomes more for me of really putting it more to the onus of the defense. And my only thing with this is this: what I just counter this last counter mid, the people that want the offense to sustain drives and go forward right now. Putting in perspective, when you look at NFL history and new offensive coordinators come on to new teams, it takes time. It takes time for the offense to get to fully where it will be within maybe 10 games, a year, 2 years even. So when you're into game 2 and you're just bringing on this new offense and we had none of the preseason going, to expect that offense is going to be hitting at maximum calibration throughout the course of the whole game and doing these new sustained drives under this new offense, it's great in theory, but previous history tells us that's not really realistic. It's if our offense puts up 30 points, our defense gives up 350 and 190 on the ground, I'm going to the defense and saying, you guys got to buck it up. Does the offense need to improve? Yeah. Does Russell Wilson need to stop falling back into the old habits? Does the offense need to stop falling back in the old habits? You better believe it. Because if he does not embrace this offensive system, if he does not really take full command and ownership of it, we are not going to go anywhere, and he most likely will be gone at the end of the year. That's big part that's hanging on this.
Yeah, and I was really also not really feeling what we were doing in that game, not really utilizing our tight ends well. I mean, we should have at least done a few more dump off passes to Gerald Everett or Will Dissly. I don't think Will Dissly had a single catch last week. We got to get back to what won us that game in Indianapolis, and that was our usage of the tight ends and the quick plays on the short plays on like third and short to keep those drives alive too. And that's one thing I don't get, why we left that and tried going for those deep balls to the wide receiver, which I just don't like the fact when we have to go third and short, go for the long ball. When Wilson tried to go for the long ball on third and short, I remember we were talking about this week 1. I want to see less of that. But other than that, getting into our matchup with Minnesota, we know Dalvin Cook's not going to be 100%. So how much?
And just really quick, last thought on that. I agree 100% that Wilson, when I look at that and not targeting tight ends, when you don't have one target of a tight end, or I think it's one, that does come to me to the quarterback at that point, where you didn't go through your progressions ever landing on the tight ends. And that's an incorrect place for Russell Wilson to be on that. And that is one of the places I'm not giving him a pass or the offensive pass in this game. They could have played better, but it's just one of those things that the defense played so badly on the other side. It just gets to be too beyond the pale a little bit. Minnesota matchup, I think you're right to hit the nail on the head with the fact that Dalvin Cook is the big key on this game. If you have Alexander Madison in and he's the guy that's the main guy rushing the rock for the Vikings, that's a big difference. I don't care if he put up 100 yards on us last year. That's irrelevant to me. This is a different defense. He is a threat. That offensive line of the Vikings cannot pass protect great, but boy, can they run block. They will get downhill on you. They will push you off the ball. So for a team that got pushed off the ball last week, for a team that got gouged, it's a legitimate concern. And probably the key to this football game is limiting Dalvin Cook, or if he's not in there, I think we're going to be in a lot better shape, but just limiting Dalvin Cook if he is out there. And it does look like he is at least going to play.
Yeah, and we got to do better at covering the middle too, because we weren't really covering the middle last time, and hence I seen Brennan Nelson touch up on this in a video about how we were letting the running backs get the easy dump offs and convert them for like 5 to 12 yards. We can't be allowing that to happen. The linebackers got to be in better coverage in those middle dump off passes to the running backs from here on out.
I have a theory on that though. So early on in the game, you're getting beat on deep passes, which this defense is not supposed to be beat on deep passes. We play our coverages specifically to take away the deep stuff, yet we were getting gouged deep. That made Coach Carroll freak out a little bit on top of trying to stop the run. So he was dropping his zones deeper to protect against some of the deep shots that were hit, and then the Titans were hitting stuff underneath. I think it was a little bit of a symptom of you giving up those big plays early on in the game. And if those big plays hadn't happened, you'd be more in your normalized defense where you wouldn't be seeing as easy a completion at that time of the football game. They do got to improve it though. The nice part about this game, it's not nice. I'm not celebrating injury here, but both Kendricks and Barr is out in this game. Kendricks is fighting through injury himself. So you could attack these linebackers. And to your point, again, if you're talking about a game where you're going to game plan, you're going to say, hey, we're going to target this side of the field. We're going to go at this attack. We're going to take Gerald Everett and Will Disley, and we're going to attack their linebackers, especially if we're dealing with backups. This would be that game to do that, especially coming on the heels of last week. So I agree. It should be implemented more into this attack. And, that would be the place I'd like to see them go out. I don't know defensively, though. If we don't take care of stuff over the top, man, this is another one of those like Carroll freak out modes. When he sees his defense giving up deep shots, it makes him freak out because that's the thing he wants to hold up against more than anything else. So then he'll give up 7-yard completions in front just to layer it into his defense. You do not give up these big shots. Keep everything in front of you.
And there's my concern about that going in. We're going up against a team that likes to take deep shots in Minnesota because Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, that young phenom who had a spectacular rookie year last year for Minnesota. You got to give Jefferson props where he deserves it. They're going to be taking a lot of deep shots this week at Jefferson and Thielen alone. That's one of my things I'm concerned about. And can the cornerbacks hold up against that? That's one of my big concern is how much are we going to have? We got to try to limit Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen this week too. So that's my number one concern for the defense other than Dalvin Cook. Number two is going up against those receivers.
I think it's a legitimate concern. And right now you don't want to see any more Trey Flowers out there, in my opinion. I'd much rather see Sidney Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
If they make a trade. I can't think that anybody else would be worse than what we're seeing from Trey. That was his worst game, in my opinion, as a pro, despite only giving up. And I talked to Brian about this, only 4 catches for 100 yards, but he had that drop early on with AJ Brown where Brown could have gouged him for another 40. And the day looked a lot worse at that point for him statistically. It looked worse for him on the football field. Reed held up okay. Yeah, he got owned. He just got owned. And look,
like a rag doll by Derrick Henry. Let's not forget about that.
Well, that's why that's the sealer for me at that point, because the reason is he's supposed to be a plus tackler from the corner position. He's not supposed to be a guy. He's not really good sticky. He's kind of okay in coverage. Okay, but you're supposed to be a tackler. You're a former safety convert coming down, and to completely whiff, not even to hold on for dear life and wait for the cavalry to arrive. That to me, it was just I wasn't very encouraged by that play. And I'm at this point where try somebody else. You got to go a different direction with it. But look, they came out the game. I watched the Cardinal Viking game last week. They threw the ball all over the football field to start out. They've got another third receiver too right now who's coming up a bit. I forget his name, number 17, but he's actually got the most catches for them right now to start out this year. So they actually are developing a good 3 wide receiver attack there. It's going to be a little bit of the key. You limit Dalvin, and can you limit the big plays? I think they're going to attack us in the run game though. They did that against the Cardinals, and they were getting 10 yards a pop in that game to start out over and over and over again with Dalvin. If he's ready to go, they're going to go right at us again, seeing that weakness from us this last week.
I would not be surprised if they did. Another concern for me, offensive side, is what the hell is up with Dwayne Eskridge? What kind of concussion did he sustain if he's going to be out 2 weeks in a row? I mean,
I've got a meme video on my channel of me reacting to the first 3 picks of the last 3 years of the time I've had my channel rolling, and all 3 of them are bad, and Eskridge was just right there along with it this year. And one of the reasons I didn't like it was because he is a little bit of an injury-prone player going back to college. And guys don't tend to get healthier as they go along into their pro career if they're already banged up and battered back in college. He literally changed his number in the hopes that he could change his luck within college with his injuries. That was, you can find that quote. It's literally why I did it. So yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily one of those guys. Like, he's probably, he looks like Percy Harvin on the field, and he might be like Percy Harvin off with the injury stuff, where you just don't know what you're going to get week to week on this guy getting out there and being ready to roll.
Yeah,
I,
hopefully we get him back next week, but I get what you're saying on that too. Now, offensive line side of it, we got to go up against Danielle Hunter, and we don't know if Everson Griffin's going to be back because Everson Griffin had a concussion last week against the Arizona Cardinals, the aging veteran who was with, I think it was with Detroit last year after he left Minnesota. I forgot where he went before. Ended up
Cowboys.
Back. Yeah, that's right. It was Dallas Cowboys, and then he ended up back in the division with Detroit for that year, and then ended up back with Minnesota. We know Everson Griffin's got a concussion. We don't know if he'll be back. We know we got to face Danielle Hunter is my biggest concern this week. Danielle Hunter. And then the injury that we have, we know Brandon Shell is going to be out. And I've been hearing a lot of news about Jamarco Jones having to go into this game. I'm really concerned about that matchup with Danielle Hunter this week.
As you should be, and they should be committing to double teaming and chip blocks. Hopefully not utilizing tight ends so we can get some of those guys in their routes. But you're going to need to provide some help. There is even some other threats along this line. Michael Pierce is coming back for them this year. He was out last year. He's very solid. He has a couple of sacks out the gate. Sheldon Richardson's essentially their third tackle in their rotation to come in there as a pass rusher. That's another guy who's he's not a game wrecker, but he can be a problem from the defensive tackle position.
He was a great run stopper with the Seahawks a couple years back. I remember
he was, yeah. And I think he's been more of in that gun for hire mode rather than I'm going to stick with the team and just stay out the rest of my career, where he's looking for whatever went to the Browns for a while and he's just trying to get paid. That's my general opinion. I'm not hating it. You do you, man. But he's still a good player. There's secondaries where you got to attack. I don't know if you looked at it with it, but Rashad Breeland's fighting off an injury. Peterson's got a toe thing going on. You look at the guy that Cameron Dantzler, who got sunned by DK Metcalf last year. I mean, he just completely baptized him by fire in that game. So you theoretically should be able to go at. I mean, Harrison Smith's pretty good. They got some decent elements, but there is some holes. And watching that Cardinal game, they sliced and diced him. The thing, and again, just to go back to your original point on this. What the Cardinals did out the gate, though, in that game, they didn't try to run the ball into the teeth of that defense. They did the short passing attack, which is what I've been hammering on the last couple of weeks for our Hawks to do to get Russell into that mindset of throwing short throughout the football game rather than having to embrace it late into the third because he's been throwing moonshots all day.
Yeah, another thing I was going to touch up on that, what you mentioned with the secondary. I remember last year's matchup when I was watching in Seattle when we got shut out in the first half, 13-0. I remember Minnesota was playing two safeties deep. Could we expect that same thing again this year? Two safeties deep from Harrison Smith and whoever their other safety is. And I mean, just that's where we really got to hit them with the tight ends, which was what got us started last year when we faced him, when Will Dissly had the first touchdown of that game last year. And then if they're doubling up Metcalf, we know that's going to open up Lockett and Freddie Swain too. So, and I know Metcalf just needs to chill though. I know he's upset and all, but he just needs to chill. He costed us with a costly holding penalty, and that's another point I want to get on. Dying down on the penalties too, because penalties were really killing us. How many penalties did we have for 100 yards again? Was it like
10?
10, exactly, 10 penalties. We just got to cut down on those penalties too, especially to maintain those offensive drives and especially to trying to get our defense off the field too.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you on all accounts. It's a little bit of, and I hate always being the wet blanket with it, but after watching Coach Carroll for 10 years and having 10 years of data on his team, you go back to Legion of Boom era days. Yeah. We were never disciplined as a defense as far as penalties are concerned. We've always been one of the most penalized teams throughout Coach Carroll's entire era here. You could say in a lot of respects, it's the cost of doing business. Did we see an extreme version of it this last week? Yeah. But I mean, you would have thought he would have been in DK's ear prior to this with some of the shenanigans that have happened, and he hasn't been. And I just get this impression of he wants those guys in that wildfire spirit of things, and that he somehow feels like he's tampering down their soul to try to check them on this stuff a little bit harder and to hold their line to it. And this is again with a guy like Carroll coming on the heels of more of a disciplinarian type, and Holmgren, who would really be on that. He called those things, mental errors, things you can control. It's one thing to have a holding penalty in the heat of the moment. It's another thing to be over there hot dogging or hitting a quarterback in the head on a pass rush or blocking a guy too far out of bounds. That's a different type of animal. And I'm with you. I'd like to see more of it. There's a lot of things here with Coach Carroll that frustrate me with his teams and how they go. There's some good sides too. It ain't all bad. We're talking a little bit more on the bad, but we're coming off a loss. That's what you do. But these are the things that come with a Coach Carroll team. I would reckon if you go back to his USC teams, those were probably pretty highly penalized teams, even going back into college, because he just doesn't. You have coaches that are either really on point like that and they think of that in those details, and other guys that are just big picture guys who don't want to get bogged down by the details like that, and they operate from a different place. They can both be successful, but they operate from kind of different landscapes of what they look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then other than that, back to the topic that we were on hand with, going up against that secondary. I'm kind of expecting two safeties deep again.
Yes, you're right on that. 100%. If they weren't doing that, they'd be crazy. We haven't established yet enough of a running game to make you have to bring us one of your strong safety into the box. They've already have a prevalence to want to play that defense as it is. They have corners on the outside that are beaten up and battered. That all would lend to me. And if you're anticipating from a Seahawks offensive side, they're going to be playing a lot of that. So to your point, hit the tight ends. And some of that's got to be hitting them into the middle of the field, because you never know if the corner's actually going to be running the cover three, just going deep stuff, or if they might be lingering underneath to take away some of the shorter routes at that point. Like if you're trying to run a crosser with a tight end, around the field. So they use a variety of routes is what I'm saying on those short routes. Don't just try to do it as one thing or this thing, but actually work in the screen game as well.
I think we're going to see a lot of Disley and Everett this week. I have a good feeling about that. And I'm hoping that it pays off big time.
Me too, man. Me too.
Do it. This would be the week to do it. If they play that two safety deep, that's where you got to hit them, because that's when we started getting going last year against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's you. If they start doing that, you attack and you start to. And look, teams are going to start taking away the deep ball again. If they see us falling back into this same old habits of things, the taking away the deep ball basically starts with just taking two safeties and having them run deep. And now you have two guys on one basically running deep. Good luck completing it. Like you saw in that Lockett ball in overtime, right? Where on the throw, it wasn't even close to being completed. He really didn't have any separation, and there's a safety coming downhill on him if the ball was inbounds and thrown a little bit more, out like that. So that's what's going to happen. The teams like they tried to do last year, they're going to force you to play this way. And I hammer on it, but Russell Wilson has got to embrace that. He's got to embrace that. I think Walder embraces it. I think it's in his play calling. But that play with Lockett, it's been a meme play where they've taken screenshots of it, because you have Carson open in the flat, then you have two receivers. You have Disley and
Disley and Everett.
Everett, it's Everett and Swain going to the right. So it's one of those situations where you go, okay, you have a blitzer coming, but you have a hot route that way and you have a hot route that way. So if the hand's in your face this way, throw it that way. If the hand's in your face that way, throw it that way. But his instinct is always to try to run out of it and pirouette and spin around. And sometimes that works great. But the problem is that we've seen the returns of that. The returns of that only get you so far as an NFL season go. So to get into him more, we've got to have him expand. And that's going to be the key of this year, man. It really will be.
But man, that game probably should have ended in a safety last week. I remember that play happened in my too. I remember.
Agreed.
I was pissed. I was in the very end zone it happened in.
Yeah. No, I thought that they should have called it as a safety as well. We got bailed out on that little play with it, but it was such a silly play of like what we've seen Russell do in the past, where it's just you're holding the ball too long, man. Find something. Just find somebody, trust somebody to try to do something. It might be 4 down territory there for you, for all you know, if you just get a completion sometimes. Everything is made sometimes so hard with the way he plays on stuff, and he's magnificent in it. I love Russell Wilson as a quarterback, but I want to see Russell Wilson take that next step in his game now. I want to see him. Everybody talks about MVPs with him. He wants an MVP. If that's really where he wants to start targeting, it ain't about yards and touchdowns and super beautiful passes 65 yards down the field. It will be the 7-yard slant route. It will be the 8-yard comeback route. It will be the 3-yard drag route across the field. That's what will get him his MVPs if that's what he really wants. But he's got to embrace throwing to that particular type of route. Yeah,
to be honest with you, me and my dad, we don't like to talk about MVP. We just like to talk about just winning games, not individual awards.
I know, and I'm not into MVPs either, but I mentioned it because I know he's into it. Russell Wilson favors it. Russell Wilson values MVPs. He's a guy who talks a lot about his legacy and where he sees, and legacies are built by MVPs along with championships. And so for a guy that's never gotten one MVP vote, and that sticks in the back of his craw, he's a guy that's going to want to value trying to get to that state eventually. And I'm just saying, if he wants to get to that state, he's thinking he's got to go up the mountain here. I'm saying take up the pass on the side where there's already a trail. It doesn't have to be that hard.
Get rid of the ball faster. Don't hold on to it too long. Exactly.
Right. And I'll tell you, you can go, well, what about the height? Yeah, maybe. I watched Kyler Murray in last week's game through the first 2.5 quarters against the Vikings, slice and dice him up with short passes. Yeah. And he's shorter than Russell Wilson. So if he can do it, why can't Russ pull that off as well?
Exactly. And that's what Waldron needs to start getting on Russell Wilson about too.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing too, like other than with the two safety Steves, that would be another good opportunity to utilize Chris Carson in the screen passes, him and possibly Alex Collins. And we saw a nice little good screen pass play to Travis Homer last week. I thought that was a really, really good, well thought out play to Homer when he got us one of those key first downs on one of those touchdown drives too.
I agree. I think you need swing routes. I think you do a variety of things. Rather, that's definitely the screens to tight ends to running backs. I like there was a play we did against the Colts, one of my favorite plays of week 1, and it was like just stupid and silly. But Russell gets to his back foot on his 5-step drop, whips the ball out to Chris Carson in the flat. Carson takes it up for 8 yards.
Yeah,
and it was Russell. He hit that back foot, my guy. And he let it rip. He knew where he was going to go with it. He threw with anticipation in that moment. It wasn't. Let me see where is Carson at? No, it's right out into Carson, and Carson's upfield. And it was if he can do that, there are free plays like that because defenses play so much deep with him on their drops. So it will be there. But again, it all comes back again and again. Commitment to doing it. You've got to be embracing Russell throwing those passes and understanding you might give up one of your deep moon shots by going over there and hitting that in the flat. By keeping that part of your game, you're expanding what you can do on an offense and what a defense has to defend against.
All right. And then defensive side, we all know this one, getting pressure on Kirk Cousins. Once again, pass rush needs to come out big on this one too, especially now the last time around when we played Minnesota, Jamal Adams was out with the injury and we didn't even have Carlos Dunlap yet, which is why they were able to run the ball the way they were against us with Dalvin Cook before Dalvin Cook left the game with an injury and Alex Madison too. And then he had all that time in the pocket to hit Jefferson and Thielen and Kyle Rudolph. Obviously, Kyle Rudolph's now a New York Giant, but obviously we know the big factors are going to be Jefferson and Thielen this year, and that number 17 guy, which I don't know his name either. But getting pressure on Kirk Cousins alone, this has to be the game for Dunlap and even guys like Rasheem Green to just get out there and just get after him. Plus, we don't know if we're going to have Benson Mayowa because Benson Mayowa is one of the questionable guys that we have on injured for our injured players too. So,
might be a good thing.
And then Poona Ford. I don't know if Poona Ford is 100%, especially after that back injury he sustained against the Colts. And we know he played last week against Tennessee. So how much do you think we got to blitz? I mean, I'm not blitz, but we just got to bull rush the crap out of Kirk Cousins and make him feel uncomfortable. And that's got to be with Dunlap and Poona Ford and Green, I think, in my opinion.
Well, I think you're right. I think you got to get it done with the front four. Watching the Cardinals and what they did last week, Cardinals like to blitz a lot as a defense. But last week, the way they played the Vikings is they just ran a lot of 4-man fronts at him and then dropped as many guys into coverage as they could and squeeze those zones out, make Kirk have to really think what he's seeing, not just let him get automatic mode. Because Kirk's one of those like rhythm passers. You let him on rhythm, you let him sit in the pocket, let him get his back foot and go. He's gonna cut you up a bit. He's good enough to do that. Now, if you can do the opposite of that, just get him moving slightly, get him off platform, get him outside the pocket. Remember KJ Wright's interception last year where he's rolling out on that pocket and he Spider-Man's it, right? And that really is, you got Cousins moving, which he doesn't want to do in throwing. He's like the antithesis of Russell Wilson in that respect. So get the front four pressure. I think you mentioned Rasheem Green. I'm happy with Mayowa being out because now this gets Alton Robinson snaps. I don't know what Alton Robinson's done to piss off Carroll, but every time he's on the football field, at every point in time, he's productive. Last year, he got 4 sacks in a really, really highly rotational role where it was like probably 13% of the snaps for the season is what he was given, which is to me ridiculous because that's the best production from a pass rusher you've had since Bruce Irvin in 2012 as a rookie. But yet, even still now into the second year, preseason lights it up.
Um,
First game, our highest rated defender by Pro Football Focus. This last game, he gets 7 snaps, and one of those 7 snaps get a strip sack fumble. Well, what am I missing on this guy? Why can't you guys find a way to get him on the football field? So yeah, you're right. You've got to get the pressure there. I'll say this though too. One other thing in conjunction with that is the linebackers need to play better, and I'm not talking about Bobby Wagner here.
Jordan Brooks.
I'm talking about Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton, our 2 lowest rated defenders in this football game by Pro Football Focus. And I don't just lean on Pro Football Focus. This matched what I saw to my eyes as well. But the 2 worst defenders in this game were Cody Barton and Jordan Brooks.
That was when he started hitting the running backs in the middle on the short plays.
There was a little bit of that, but it's also in their ability to stop the run. You mentioned last year in Minnesota, that was a game that Cody Barton started actually in that game. He got a lot of not started, but I think KJ Wright went out for a while and he got a ton of snaps in that game, and they went after him. Minnesota attacked him in the running game.
Didn't Cody Barton have the key 4th down stop last year in the game where we stopped him and went 95 yards for the win?
It wasn't necessarily, there was a bunch of guys. There were 3 different guys on that play that all did something to cause that play to do what it did. He might've been one of them, but it was 3 dudes, including Demontre Moore and somebody else on that play. But he played a poor game. It was an awful game. He kept getting second level by the guards, couldn't get off the blocks, got carried up the field 15 yards. If you go watch the tape, you can go watch the highlights. It's up all over there with him, Cody. He looks horrible in that game. And the thing about them in coverage, okay, I understand Jordan Brooks might not be good in coverage, but your claim to fame is supposed to be your ability to stop the run as a 1st-round pick. So if you're not good in coverage, fine, stop the run. And you didn't do that well either in this particular game. And that's the part where I have a little bit of issue with him, because that's what you guys drafted a run stuffing linebacker in the 1st round, which already makes me start to pull my hair out in this modern NFL. Now he doesn't stop the run. You know what I mean? That's a little bit like, huh?
Yeah, supposed to stop the run.
Like, there's something not add up there. Well, it's again, and come back to like our defense last night. Like, what do you do here? It's like that Office Space sketch, what is it that you do here? I'm a people person. That's like kind of what the answer is you're getting back on some of these guys,
I agree. And then also, yeah, I like what you touched up on Alton Robinson. I want him getting more snaps too, because he had a great strip sack on Ryan Tannehill, and we cashed that in for a Chris Carson touchdown. We need to be hawking at that ball. And Alton Robinson, every time he gets his hands on the quarterback, he's always hawking for the ball. So I want to see Robinson get more plays too. And plus, also, we got to also remember this. Kirk Cousins has never had to face Jamal Adams before. So we could possibly throw in a couple of Jamal Adams blitzes to try to surprise Kirk Cousins, to try to make him make mental errors. And I think if we get a couple of good blitzes out of Jamal, safety blitzes out of Jamal Adams on this, hopefully he can force an interception to either Wagner or one of our other cornerbacks. I don't care who, just force turnovers and just make it happen. But
I think he's waiting to pop. I think Adams is waiting to kind of have a game that, again, shows everybody why he was brought in here. And it's just, we're waiting on it to happen, but I think it's going to come sooner than later. And I think he's going to make us happy in one of these games as far as his impact, like you just described. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's this game, because again, Minnesota, as good as they are run blocking, might be as bad as they are pass blocking. And if you can get him into that state of have not go downhill all day, that's where you can kind of strike them.
Yeah. Because like I mentioned, Kirk Cousins has never had to face Jamal Adams before, and he was lucky he didn't have to last year.
He got a beaten down unit. We were really at that point in that game. We had a couple guys out at that point. Rasheem and Benzema was out in that game. Bruce Irvin was out in that game. By the time you get to Minnesota, I remember Demontre Moore getting so many snaps, a guy's not in the NFL anymore. And you had him out there as your starting defensive end for a large part of that game. Or at least getting enough snaps that would be like a starter snaps. So we're going to be in a lot better state this year when we're playing them. Their line might be even a little bit better this year than it was last year. That's the one, caveat to that, but their defense is probably a little bit worse, a little bit more long in the tooth this year than what it was in previous years.
Yeah, so that's why with their offensive line, we can definitely rely on them definitely going towards Dalvin Cook a lot more in this game than last game. But we also just got to remember, we don't know if Dalvin Cook is going to be 100%. He was listed as questionable. I still think he plays though, but what version?
I think they limited his touch. They got to limit his touches. I mean, I forget what it was here through the first 2 weeks, but I want to say he's just been. Let me look real quick here, because I know with this guy that they're really utilizing him a bunch. And you early on in the season, you've got 2 straight games out the gate. You've given him 20 carries.
I turned on your share screen, so go ahead and pull it up.
Oh, it's all good. No, so it's 48. It's basically he's gotten 48 touches through 2 games. That's too many. That's too many for a full season. You got an extra game season this year, 17 games. You're not going to do that. So he's got to get to a point where they've got to dial that back. If he's already injured a little bit, I'm guessing this will be the week you get that. So instead of 20 touches, he might get 9, 10 touches throughout this game if they're trying to limit him a little bit. But that's going to help Seattle out because I do think that there's a difference between him and Alexander Madison's like, this. It isn't like some small little drop to the other one.
Kind of like the same thing with Carson and Collins, like you mentioned, Seattle wise.
I do think that there's a difference on them. I do think there's value though, as well as the thing when I watch early on in the year here right now with Chris Carson, I like Chris Carson a lot. But the thing that steps out to me with them is that when we utilize Chris Carson, it seems we always just have to utilize Chris Carson. We never get any other running backs in there that we're mixing in. And Collins last week gets a 25-yard carry, I think, on his first run,
Yeah.
and then never gets another carry again. It's
I want to
just
see
odd choices like that I don't understand.
I want to see. I don't know about you, but I want to see a little bit more Buddha Collins. I want to see more Alex Collins. He had a nickname
Sure.
back in Arkansas. So if we
Yeah.
can plug in Buddha a bit more and limit some of Chris Carson's carries, I would love to see him go off this game.
I think there's a value in it because you look what the 49ers do. I mean, they a couple of years ago had during their Super Bowl year, Matt Breida averaging like 5.5 yards per carry, but they were still working in the Raheem Mercerts and other running back Mostert and other running backs they had because they wanted to have it. He understands Shanahan the value of the different running back styles. Carson's a different running back from Collins. They move differently, they break tackles differently, and defenses get used to a certain thing over the course of the game and tackling a guy, and you send a different guy up, and it's like he's dancing on you where the other guy was running over you. That dancing guy might break a few tackles there in that moment because they've all just been getting hyped up on taking down the bull. And I feel like there's value in doing it. Hopefully they will start to find a way. It's much like Alton Robinson. He goes out and gets a sack and then gets 6 snaps through the rest of the game. Alex Collins goes out, gets 25 yards on a carry, doesn't get another single carry the rest of the football game.
And Travis Homer gets one pass play for a first down. He doesn't get another play the rest of the game.
Yeah, I don't. That worked once, so we'll use it once.
We gotta roll out our bag of tricks this week and just hope that we can, get back in the race. And hopefully we get a little help from Tampa Bay and Green Bay this week, as we all know. Hopefully we get like I mentioned, hopefully we get a little help from Tampa Bay and Green Bay this week, since Tampa's playing the Rams and Green Bay's playing the 49ers. So, but mainly the main thing we just got to focus on is just only what we can control. And that's trying to beat Minnesota this week for us. But if we get a little help along the way, that's always going to be great. And I think this would be a good week, hopefully, for that. Because let's be real, Jacksonville ain't going to do shit against Arizona.
No. Arizona's going to pound they're going to bow race them. We're not. It's still going to remain the toughest division in football. That's the dark specter that looms over us above all else. Is that this division's the toughest in football. It's looking tougher than it's looked in recent years, as it's been the toughest in football. And it doesn't bode well for those games of us having to play, because they're going to be dog fights. They're going to be wars every single week. And if you're beating up on each other, it can sometimes take away the top end of what you can get to for a season as far as having Super Bowl aspirations are concerned.
Yeah. All right. Did we touch up on everything just about?
I think so. I guess just a question I've been asking folks. Love to hear what your thought. Is there anybody out there you're looking for our Hawks with their $13 million of cap space to target via a trade?
I want Geno Atkins. He's a free agent. I want Geno Atkins. I want to get Geno in there.
All right.
Geno Atkins. It sucks that we couldn't get Austin Ryder because our center, I'm not big on Kyle Fuller like Brendan Nelson isn't big on Kyle Fuller. I was really pissed that we didn't get Austin Ryder while he was available, and now he's on the New Orleans Saints. So there was that, but we might pull some surprise. Pete and John might pull some sort of surprise, pull a rabbit off the hat like they did the one time a few years back when they surprised us with the Quandre Diggs trade. So it's wait and see. It's whatever happens. But right now, what we got is what we got, and we just gotta go with it.
I agree with you. I mean, we do have the money. We do have the money to make a deal, though. I mean, you could sign Geno Atkins. He's not going to cost but a couple $1 million for the rest of the year. You got $13 million in cap space. You still can go make another deal on top of that. It's going to say a lot to how far they want to push this year as far as going for it. Like, let's go for it. Or if they're looking to take that money and roll it over into next year's cap, which I hope they're not. But there's going to be some trades coming up here with the trade deadline. There'll be some interesting guys out there that potentially could upgrade this team.
Gilmore's another question mark too.
He'd be an interesting guy to look at. I was pondering the other night potentially bringing him in and then being able to move a little bit more to a man concept on one side of the field, zone concept on the other, and then you could do a lot more blitzing theoretically with Adams. You could do a lot more of exotic stuff, bear fronts that a lot of people are looking to have, put to bear, for lack of a better word, put the bear out there. they could get that with that type of situation. Bring on a Gilmore guy that you could trust on the outside one-on-one with a guy.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for that one, man. But let's just hope for the best and just hope that we're coming into this game more pissed than Minnesota, because we got to remember Minnesota is going to be hungry for a win since they're 0-3 as well. So, I mean, since they're 0-3, granted, we're 1-1. So
You're getting their best punch. You're going to get a playoff level of intensity in that stadium. You're going to get their best punch. They're not coming in there giving you like, well, season's done. No, they're fighting for their season right now. Not just like Tennessee was kind of in this last game against us. That's the same kind of effort they threw at us. Yeah. You're going to get it again. Take that punch,
Yeah, but we got to come in punching harder.
You got to return it. Yeah, you take the first punch, you get through that, you weather that storm, and then you come back. That's usually how you can do against those teams. They come out firing, and you're like, oh, but then you just kind of slowly kind of bring it back around.
Let's get it this week. Let's get it. And
let's get it, man.
Make sure you guys also subscribe to the Hawks Nest if you hadn't yet, and also make sure if you're new to subscribe to yours truly right here. Glad that me and Hawks Nest were able to do the preview this week, and hopefully we can get more to come on. I know you were busy yesterday and you had the cold after doing the thing with Brendan, but still, I appreciate you once again taking the time and doing this with me, getting back and doing it on a Friday. I appreciate you.
No worries. Thanks for your patience on it with it, and we'll get back rolling on this here, so we'll get back over to you somewhat soon here. So definitely, man.
All right. Sam Dog and the Hawks Nest signing out. If you ain't with it, you ain't infamous. And as always, go Seahawks.
Go Hawks.